Today we're going to dive into a story from another time. The year is 1964. I was 17. And this is all about what it took, the planning, the obstacles, the sheer willpower to cross a continent for first love. A journey that all started with letters from a girl named Shelagh.
You know, her letters from Hamburg, they were pretty much my entire world back then. She wrote, "It seems like an eternity, and the last month will be the most eternal." And let me tell you, I felt every single one of those words. The waiting was just unbearable. It had been 10 long months since I'd seen her, and with every letter, the need to go to her, to just erase that distance, it became this absolute necessity.
And then, in one of her letters, she sent me her phone number. The thought of actually hearing her voice, well, it was just too much to resist. It was a really risky idea, but, it was one I just had to take.
So one afternoon, when the house was completely empty, I snuck into my stepfather Otto's study to use his phone. My heart was just pounding. I was under such high tension because I knew I absolutely should not be making an expensive long-distance call. I gave the operator the number in Hamburg and just waited, staring out the window at the lawn, just trying to keep my cool.
And then I heard her. After all those months, her voice came through the line. It was so familiar, so clear, and so close. It was honestly as if she were standing right there in the room with me. In that one moment, the hundreds of kilometers between us just disappeared.
We spoke so fast, desperately trying to cram 10 months of life into just a few minutes. I told her my plan. I was going to travel on July 23rd, the day I got my final report card. But right in the middle of it, I heard that unmistakable gravelly sound of my stepfather's Volkswagen coming up the driveway. Total panic. I had to end the call right then or get caught. We said a rushed goodbye, and just like that, she was gone again.
That phone call, though, that sealed it. I was going to London, where she'd be waiting. But making the decision, that was the easy part. Actually getting there, that was going to be a whole different ballgame.
My path was blocked by three, let's call them enormous obstacles. First, I had to pass my final exams. The whole trip depended on getting good enough grades. Second, I had to get my mother's permission. And third, and this was probably the biggest hurdle of them all, was the money.
So get this, my entire savings for a 4-week trip to England was exactly 45 Deutschmarks. At the time, that was barely more than £4 sterling. It was just nowhere near enough for travel, food, and everything else for a whole month. Not even close.
Now, I had a pretty strong suspicion my mother was secretly reading Shelagh's letters, which I cleverly, or so I thought, hid in my underwear drawer. So I figured she probably already knew I had a bit of a financial problem. I picked my moment really carefully, waiting for a quiet afternoon when she seemed relaxed and my stepfather was out. And I just laid out my case, explaining how my 45 marks just wasn't going to cut it.
And you know what? It worked. My grades, thankfully, were just good enough to pass, so that took care of problem number 1. And my mother, who I think was probably softened by the romance in Shelagh's letters, she actually agreed to help me out financially. And just like that, my impossible dream became a very, very real plan. I started making a packing list that same day.
So, on July 23rd, 1964, report card in hand, I packed my one suitcase and set off from Munich. The adventure had finally, truly begun.
Okay, so here was the plan. I was going to cross Germany in 2 stages. The first part, the long haul from Munich to Wiesbaden, I figured I'd hitchhike. Then from Wiesbaden, I'd hop on a train and head north to Aachen, the last city before the Belgian border.
My very first ride was with an older gentleman in a DKW, and I got so lucky he was going all the way to Wiesbaden. He was a man of very few words, though. We drove for 420 kilometers in almost complete silence. He just focused on the road, and I was just lost in my own thoughts, watching the German countryside fly by through those big panoramic windows.
From Wiesbaden, the next part of the trip was by train. I got on one heading north, and for hours, the tracks just hugged the beautiful Rhine River Valley on the way to Cologne. And then, in a total stroke of luck, an old friend spotted me on the platform and offered me a ride for the final 80 kilometers. By 10 o'clock that night, I'd made it all the way across the country to Aachen, right on the border.
In Aachen, I met up with my friend Ralph, who was also on his way to England. And as we waited for our overnight train, the evening sun was bathing everything in this surreal golden light. We were both just on the verge of something completely new, and you could feel the excitement in the air. We were just reveling in this hopeful anticipation of experiences we had never known before.
So this was it. All that was left was the final leg of the journey, a train through the night, a ferry across the English Channel, and then one last train ride right into the heart of London.
We boarded the ferry from Austin to Dover in the pitch black of night. I gotta be honest, the ship didn't look like much, all shrouded in darkness and a damp fog, but it was our bridge to England. It was the thing that was gonna carry us across the North Sea.
On the open deck, man, it was damp and it was cold. I'd bought a little flask of Ballantine's whiskey at the duty-free shop. It was the first time I'd ever paid for anything with a pound note. As the ferry pulled away from the harbor after midnight, Ralph and I used that whiskey to try and keep ourselves warm against that biting sea air.
Eventually, the cold just drove us inside. We found an empty bench in the passenger lounge and fell asleep almost immediately. We were woken up by the captain's voice over the loudspeaker announcing we were about to arrive in Dover. We rushed back outside, and there it was. The English coast, the white cliffs, all of it just bathed in this incredible, bright morning sun.
I somehow managed to get through customs without the guards finding the gifts I'd brought for Shelagh's parents, a bottle of Malza wine and a German hard sausage. From there, we boarded the final train. As it pulled out of the station, the English countryside just opened up in front of us, this amazing patchwork of lush green meadows and perfectly kept fields.
I found a seat by the window and just watched the scenery race by. Those rolling green hills, they were so different from anything I knew, and they had this almost hypnotic effect. The gentle rocking of the train and the deep exhaustion from the journey just started to catch up with me, and I began to doze off.
But even as I was drifting off, my mind was racing ahead, hurtling toward the city faster than the train itself. After all the letters, the secret phone call, the exams, and this long, long journey across Europe, I was almost there. And really, only one question mattered. What and who was waiting for me in London?